my father played for Gala, and we lived in Gala for a bit, which was, as you will know, Charles, is a hotbed of Scottish rugby. And basically, I went to St Mary's School in Melrose, and that's where I really got my sort of first taste of rugby. And we were extremely fortunate that Norman Mayer came along to teach it at the school.
And he was our great rugby writer.
Yeah. And I remember my mother had given me a pair of shorts, and I was playing in the wing. And I got the ball and raced up the wing, but the elastic of my shorts gave way. And as I approached the line, my shorts slowly slipped to my ankles, but I just managed to score a try. And anyway, Norman came over and he said, Rodger, we've got to do something about this. First of all, you've got to have a new pair of shorts. And secondly, I'm going to change you from a wing into a back row forward, which he did. And that's really where it started. And I will say that Norman was a great inspiration for me. And he went on to be, at the Scotsman, where he wrote articles on rugby. And, he was always very helpful.
Yes.
So that was really my first introduction.
Yes, that Accie's of a younger generation, he's probably one of the top 10 rugby writers ever. He was beautifully lyrical. He had a wee twinkle in his eye and always a lovely sign-off at the end of every article. However, we're talking about you, Rodger. You came to the Henderson Road 1957. Now, you were obviously a boarder. What was life like as a boarder at the school in the late 50s?
I was in Jeffrey House. It was, we were in a boarding house, and I remember, we had a lot of fun there. I remember the guy that was in charge of the dorm was a chap called Fatso MacDonald. And as a new boy in the bed up at the top of the Jeffrey House, he said, we have a fire drill here. And what I want you to do, if the bell goes off, I want you to pick up your mattress, and this is about 3 floors up, and throw it out of the window. Then we all jump after it. So that's an example of some of the fun and games that we had at Jeffrey House. But in general, it was a good experience.
Well, and from my memory, and I'm sure of those of you, as boarders were always a breed apart. They very much looked after each other. They were a hardy lot, and pretty hard. Is that what made you the kind of teak, tough, hard rugby player that you became, both for the school and then on for your club?
I suppose so. I mean, just to give you an example, if we take it forward to the Scottish trials, I got a number of trials, and as you showed me earlier, me in the blue jersey. But anyway, at one of the trials, this selector, who were a very mixed bunch, I've got to say, at that time in Scotland, came up to me, and I think he had played for Daniel Stewart's 5th 15 or something like that, but he knew very little about rugby. They said, Rodger, he said, I've got 2 things to tell you. First of all, you're not aggressive enough. And secondly, you're too light. So I thought about this, and I thought about it, went home to my mother, who was back home in Galashiels, and we're sitting in the kitchen together, and she was making a cake. So she was taking the flour and putting in these scales, and there were scales with weights on one side and a bowl on the other side. So I looked at her and I said, Mum, I've been talking, this selector came up to me after the trial and said, Rodger, you'll never get into the Scottish team. You're not aggressive enough, and basically you're not heavy enough. So I said, I don't know what I can do about that. Perhaps eat more of your cakes. She said, no, I've got a better idea. You have a look at these weights. Anyway, cut long story short, the next time I got a trial, I had put my shorts on. I put the weights in my pocket. I pulled my tracksuit bottoms on. I was weighed, and he came up to me. He said, "Oh, that's remarkable, Rodger. You're now 14 stone 11, and you're much better for it." And there we are. Now that was what happened in those days, and I got into the Scottish team.
We'll talk about your rugby in detail a bit later, but what are your memories of life academically, Rodger, at that school in those days?
Well, I think, to be fair, it was pretty mixed. I think there was some wonderful, really good people there. To name them, Jock King, Bill Fieldhouse, Jack Bevan, of course, who they were inspirational people. And of course, then you had, other masters. But I would say that academically, my experience at the academy was pretty mixed academically.
Given that the school was sort of still recovering from the effects of the Second World War, was it a fairly basic school? Was there not much light and shade? Was it sort of English, French, Latin, geography? It stuck to traditional subjects.
Yeah, it was traditional subjects, and I can say no more about that. It was traditional subject, and you had your O levels and hires, and hopefully to get them and pass on. That was really it. Yeah.
So how important was rugby and the other sports to the school in those days? I mean,
I think it was. I mean, because of people like Jack Bevan, he instilled an enthusiasm in the school, and it was great to play for. I mean, I was captain of the sort of under 13 and a half right through to the first 15.
You were captain every year. You were at the academy.
Yeah, pretty well.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think I was captain in the last year. I think Jerry Sands was, but I can't really remember.
And what was it like playing for the first 15? Where did you travel all over the country to play matches? Was it still basically the traditional Scottish public schools that you played against, or what?
Yeah, I mean, there was sort of local derbies against Fettes and Loreto, and I think the furthest we went was Durham, and then we played Campbell College, which was pretty good.
Was that home and away in Belfast?
Yeah, that home and away, yes.
Great. A trip to Belfast must have been quite exciting.
Oh, yeah. Most of us were sick on the boat going over, but we played there, yeah. And I mean, there were guys that we played against that people might remember the name of Mike Gibson, and guys like that were playing for Campbell College at the time. So there was a great community. And I have to say that in Edinburgh at that time, with the schools, I mean, Ian Robertson was playing for Watson's, and we knew each other since we were kids, So there was a great underswell of socializing in Edinburgh because of sport between the schools.
It was possibly one of the last great eras of amateur rugby where you played for fun and you enjoyed the company afterwards, perhaps enjoyed it even too much, Rodger.
Charles, I think that I was very lucky to play when I played. And perhaps we'll talk about the game in the future, but we played for fun. We had a lot of fun. And I mean, so we had some wonderful times. And we made a lot of friends. So I was very lucky. And, the game has changed so dramatically. It's not the same game.
Yes, we'll talk about that later. But let's just keep back at when you left school in 1962. Did you go on to university?
I went to... I mean, I lived in the Borders, and I didn't really know what I was wanting to do. And I decided to go to the Scottish Woolen College, and I did a degree, a BSc in textile technology. And then I went to work in the Border textile trade, which was very good. And they had me on the sales side, and they sent me across to Dusseldorf, where I actually managed to learn a bit of German and really got to know the German market, but also played for the Dusseldorf Dragons. And you'll find out, if you ask me, I played for a lot of rugby clubs.
Given that you were in the Borders, given that your father had played for Gala, it's interesting that the club that you played for once you left school was Edinburgh Accies, which obviously involved lots of travel to and from Edinburgh. Why did you join Edinburgh Accies and not Gala? Well,
that's a good point. That actually I played once for Gala. That's something that they have never forgiven me for. But anyway, and as it happened, having done that, I remember many years later, I went back playing for the Northampton Saints. We went back up to Gala and we were playing against Gala, and I was carried off in the first 5 minutes.
Oh,
So that was that they expressed their concern there. But on the other hand, we went back and we gave them a fair trouncing the next time we met. We played them. But yes, I mean, I went and played for Edinburgh Accies, and I will say that the side I played for, which included people like the Millers, Jake Miller and Ian Miller, the McClungs, Pat Burnett, Dougie Jardine, Mike Marwick, they were tremendous players. And actually, it's one of the best sides I ever played in. And I'm very, very grateful to that team, the way they looked after me and the way they helped me really onto the first step of rugby, serious rugby.
And it's worth reminding people of all ages who are watching this, that these were all players who had gone to the school. They hadn't just joined on a whim, having gone. These were actually, this were the days before rugby clubs became open to anybody and everybody. These were people you had to have gone to the academy to play for Edinburgh Accies.
Absolutely. And I mean, the team spirit, but you had a lot of guys who, I mean, I was I think I was about 19, 20 when I got into the first Accie side. And most of these guys were at their peak, like Tom McClung, Gilbert McClung, Brian Neal, who we mentioned earlier. I mean, they were great players. And we used to, I mean, Borders Rugby, where I really grew up in Gala, that was very tribal. And they you know, they were, the differences between Hoyk and Gala and all the rest of it, the feuds that went on. And we used to go down and really knock 7 bells of hell out of them, which was fantastic. It was a great side. We had some great fun.
Before you played for Scotland in the late 60s, I've been doing a bit of research, and one of the books I've been researching is this one, the Clachan and the Slate, which is the official history of the Edinburgh Academy. The other one is a book called The Accies, and it's a history of the Edinburgh Academical Rugby Club. And it's interesting that there are a couple of pictures of you in it. One I'll show you in a minute, but the other one, do you remember this picture?
I can't really see it very well.
I'll tell you what it is. It is a picture of the Accies winning the Edinburgh Border Sevens at Lomond Park in 1966, and you're third from the right. So you weren't a bad sevens player as well as a full team.
We were nearly a good seven. I mean, we were in the final at Melrose Sevens. I mean, it was interesting. My father, he had all the sevens medals, and I think I got 2 or 3 as well. But we were a good seven side. And of course, being a back row forward, I was fairly mobile, so it fitted into the sevens game pretty well.
When did you reckon you might have a chance of getting in the Scotland side? Because having joined the Accies in 1962, you weren't actually capped for 6 years, so you did your time, didn't you? Before
I did. I mean, I sort of mentioned the selectors in Scotland. They were kind of a very fickle bunch at that time, and it was quite difficult to break through. But I mean, I knew I could do it. And when I was working in the textile trade in the Borders, I said to my father, I said, well, you know, it's so difficult to try and break through because there were some players there from Melrose and all the rest of it that were very difficult to push. And they had the backing of certain selectors. But eventually I got through, and that was fine. And then from there went straight on to the Lions and all the rest of it. But, you know, that was the way it was then.
In 1968, your first cap, people always tell me, I always remember my first cap. What are your memories of your first cap for Scotland, Rodger?
Well, that was in Dublin. I think we played at Lansdowne Road, and we lost the match. But I found myself that playing from club level to international level is definitely a step up. So I'm talking about physically, speed-wise, all the rest of it. But I found myself quite at home with that, and I knew that there was a future. And I was scoring a few tries, and I remember I was picked for the Barbarian Tour down in Wales, and we played against Cardiff. scored 3 tries, got into the Lions side, and the whole thing took off.
I was going to say that you remarkably became a British Lion for the Tour to South Africa in 1968, having played only twice for Scotland. How important was that Barbarians game in Cardiff, where you did very well, to nail your place on the Lions squad?
Well, it was an opportunity, and also it took me out of the Scottish environment, if you like, where I was able to show my talent. And I was very lucky that, you know, the ball bounced for me and all the rest of it. But, you know, that's rugby, and that's sport.
It wasn't the most successful Lions tour in 1968. The team did win the series, but I imagine it must have been, for someone like you, a remarkable chance to see a country in the pre-apartheid state, which of course it's now totally changed. What was it like in those days?
Oh, it was, I mean, I was 22. I lived in Gala. I mean, every day was Christmas. I mean, it really was. It was wonderful. You were training every day. You were on the pitch. You were being properly fed. It was a great team spirit, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a wonderful experience.
How much of the academy ethos percolated into your rugby style, the way you played, the things that you learned at the academy? How much did that influence your game?
I don't know, Charles. That's a very difficult question to answer, because, I mean, everybody had their own handwriting on the game, and how you played it and how you interpret it. And I think one of the things that, you know, the coach, you have to learn when you're playing sport is anticipation of not where the ball is, but where it's going to be. And I was pretty good at that. So I could read the game quite well. And I was normally on the ball very quickly.
I'm going to read an excerpt from the Accie's book, which was written by a great friend of yours, George Mingies. And he talks about you, Rodger. So for those of you who haven't seen the black and white film, the thing which was the absolute cornerstone for Rodger was his determination. I was actually faster over 100 yards than he was during the athletic season, but I never got to the ball before him in a rugby match. He was just so determined, and he would tackle anything.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was interesting. There was another great friend of mine called Bob Taylor, who played for Northampton. We played together, and we played in the Lions. And Bob used to get to the ball before me. And I thought, how the hell does he do that? So I sort of hung back and followed Bob for the next few times. And I saw that how he was doing it. So the next time I just copied that, and then I could get to the ball quickly before him. So that was the way I did it.
As someone who joined the upper school in 1970, you know, the whole school was incredibly proud of you, Rodger. I'm sure you know that. The fact that an academy boy was playing rugby for Scotland and the Lions. One thing that wasn't known about, because, well, it wasn't talked about in those days, was that you had a tremendous rivalry with another Scotland player who played for you for Scotland on the same Scotland team, and you, of course, toured with him in 1968. And most people watching this will have heard the name Jim Telfer, great Scotland player, legendary Scotland coach.
Yeah.
Tell us about that rivalry, because it was friendly, but I get the impression there was a bit of needle underneath.
I think so. Yeah, Jim was a great player. I mean, he went on to do great things for rugby, and I think, yeah, there was a friction between us, because we were playing for each other, and we both felt passionately we wanted to win. So yeah, it stemmed from that, but we're still friends. If we meet, that's fine.
Because you, I always remember, were a flanker, and he was the number 8. But a lot of the references in my research were about the fact that you were both vying for the same place in the team. I mean, presumably you were accommodated because you both ended up playing for the same team.
Yeah. I mean, on the Lions tour, he wasn't the number 8. There was Ken Goodall. So Jim missed out on that tour, and I think that probably he was getting older, and I was younger. So, you know, that's the way it was, Charles. Yeah.
And you were from Gala, and he was from Melrose, so of course that.
Yeah. And yeah, I went to St Mary's and he didn't like that.
Yes, was there a bit of the kind of posh boy v the border in there as well?
Oh yeah. Oh, there was that. That was the way it was.
And I don't get the impression that you particularly disliked it. That was all part of the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the game, and looking back, it was something you took in your stride, really.
1971 was a rugby annus mirabilis because Scotland managed to win at Twickenham, which was incredible. And then you, having not been originally picked for the 1971 Lions tour to New Zealand, got a call up. How did that happen?
Well, I'd played a season, and then I think I went to Australia with Scotland. I went to Argentina with Scotland in '69. I played another season, and basically we were talking about careers a bit earlier, Charles. I mean, I had to do some work because I was playing rugby all the time.
Yes.
And basically, I sort of dropped out for a bit, and then I remember I got a call out of the blue to go to New Zealand because somebody got injured, and I did that. But the problem was really catching up with the fitness there, and so really that. But the Lions tour for me was definitely South Africa. Going back to 1969, we went on tour to Argentina, and I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. And just a little story about Jim Telfer. Jim was captain of the side then. And before we went on tour to Argentina, we were training down at Richmond. And Jim chucked me the ball and he said, "There's Sudden and so many over there. Rodger, run over and create a loose ruck." So I did. And there was a hell of a crack. And George Burrell, who was walking up and down the touchline, said, what was that? Mike Smith, who was a doctor at that time, came running across and he said, "Rodger," he said, "I've got to tell you, your nose is broken." I said, "For goodness sake, don't tell George Burrell." So he said, "I'll have to tell him if somebody tells me it's broken." So off we went to Hammersmith Hospital, and none of the doctors could speak English, but my nose was clearly broken. They took the pictures, and when we were on the plane, Mike went up to George and said, "George, I've got to tell you, Rodger's nose is broken." And George kind of looked aghast and said, "Right, Arneil," he said, "you're playing in the first game." So I played in this is going back to these days, honestly. So anyway, I played in the first game, and so that was an experience in Argentina. But what I was going to say was, on that tour, I met my wife, and she was working for the embassy in Buenos Aires,
right.
And we met, and 2 or 3 years later we got married. So some great things happened. It's
incredible. Well done. You talk very nostalgically about rugby then. The Scotland didn't even have a coach in those days. It's incredible if you're of a more recent Accie generation to think that Scotland played without a coach. How did you manage to organise things?
Well, I mean, it was really up to the captain.
Wow.
And so the captain really did it. And by the way, I captained Scotland in Argentina for a couple of matches, just to let you know. It was really up to the captain. And I mean, there was, at the end of the day, there was a sort of player manager brought in. I think one chap called Bill Dickinson came in. Mm-hmm. He was a Glasgow man. It was just starting, really.
He was termed advisor to the captain in those days.
Advisor to the captain, yeah.
You retired after Scotland versus New Zealand in 1972, a game that Scotland nearly won, not quite. After 22 caps, 4 incredible years, and the Lions, because you went to Germany. You got was it a job transfer, or had you just decided you needed to earn some money?
I was sent over really by one of the board of textile companies, so that was that. And I lived in Dusseldorf for a bit, and I remember we played against the University of Utrecht, and we travelled there for Dusseldorf Dragons, played the match, and I bought the Telegraph on the way up. I was reading the Telegraph, and I thought, God, I've been picked for a trial. So that was on the Sunday. I went straight home on the Monday and trained all week and then played in the trial. So I played in Germany for a bit, and then we came back, and I went back. I was working for a group of independent television companies at the time, and went out and we lived in Frankfurt, where I played for the Frankfurt 1880 club, which was really good, really nice people. And just at some of the clubs I played for, just for interest, were Gala once, Accie's. I played for Hartlepool Rovers, Leicester, Northampton, the Dusseldorf Dragons, and Frankfurt 1880. So there's a fair spread of clubs.
Plus the Barbarians, Scotland, and the British and Irish Lions.
Yeah, and I was captain of the Edinburgh district side, and also I captained Durham when I was, because after the Scottish Borders experience, I joined Coates Payton's, which I didn't. Well, I joined them, and I was sent down to Leicester, and we were working in Leicester, and that's why I played for Leicester. And then after the Lions tour, because my wife had then come back to the UK, and she was a farmer's daughter and living near Northampton. So as it was, I moved to Northampton and played for the Saints.
I'm bound to ask you, as an old retired rugby player, when you sit at Murrayfield now or any of the other great stadiums of the world, and you look at teams running out and you watch whether it's a Six Nations or a Lions series, do you think, cool, I wish I was out there now, I'd give everything to be out there with the number 7 jersey on? Or do you think, better in my day, I'm glad they're there now, but I'm glad I'm not? How do you feel about rugby?
Charles, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, as I say, I was very lucky to play with some brilliant players, for and against them. And I think that the game now I think it's got really serious problems, because I'm not sure that rugby is suitable to be a professional game. And the reason is that people are, the rules have changed. It's okay, it's a spectacle, but no, not for me. And actually, I don't go back to Murrayfield.
You find that sad?
Yeah, I suppose I do, really. But I'm not, I've just lost a lot of interest in it. And I'm not sure about, in general sporting terms, the governors of the game. I'm not sure. And in rugby, I'm not sure they grasp it. I really am not.
But Rodger, if you were to spin back the years to you leaving as an 18-year-old from Henderson Row, do you not think you'd say to yourself, if you were leaving now, do you not think to yourself, I'm a good rugby player, I'm going to give this professional game a go for 10 years, fill my boots and see how far I can get? Would you not do that now if you were an 18-year-old leaving the gates of Henderson Row now?
Right. Okay, let's look at that. You come out of the academy with a couple of A levels, with the choice to go into become a chartered accountant, whatever you're going to become, or to play rugby. If you're good enough, and if you can overcome all the prejudices and all the stuff that you have to do to get in, and please Gregor Townsend that you can do this and the next thing, and you're prepared to take that gamble, well, good luck to you. But at the end of the day, you could end up with a serious problem because they've got dementia, they've got real issues with their, with their hips. I mean, some of these guys are not going to be walking when they're 40. And I think it's a game, has rugby got room for these muscle-bound giants that are running around the field? I mean, all from Fiji, and they're built differently. They seriously are. No, so actually the answer is no, thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure to interview Rodger, and as an Accie boy, I looked up to you, as we all did, as one of the great rugby players that came out of the school. What, if you look back in your life, and what things have you taken from the academy, both in and out of the classroom, in and out of the playing field? What things have you taken from the academy through life that have stood you in good stead, apart from your friendships?
Well, I think I think I was very lucky to go to the academy. I mean, you know, my parents had the foresight to send me, as I say, you know, so I was very lucky. I was very fortunate, and it gave me certain, you know, ways of living life or whatever, or views, and for that I'm eternally grateful. And you know, all I can say, I've tried my best.